Hello and thank you for joining me. This is Food Offensive Weekly News, where I bring you updates from the week concerning our food freedoms, things that are in our food, and how we can take action against those things. So I want to get started right away this evening. I have three really important items to go over, and this first one is concerning the whole Burger King scandal this week concerning the fact that they found horse meat in the burger meat. It's specifically in the UK, but this is, exploded this story, and everyone's covering it, but I think it's a little bit of overhype, maybe a little bit of overreaction, and I wanted to explain why, and then also use this as a launching point to look at the things that are really dangerous that are in those particular food chains, items that they serve. So moving right into the first article this week, it's from naturalsociety.com. It says, disturbing. Burger King admits burgers contain horse meat. And it gives a little summary of it. This is Anthony Gucciardi of naturalsociety.com. I have several articles from several sources, so I wanted to look at these, but this first one says Burger King admits to horse meat in Whoppers and burgers. And this is what they said. It says 4 samples recently taken from the Silvercrest plant have shown the presence of very small trace levels of equine DNA. We have established that Silvercrest used a small percentage of beef imported from a non-approved supplier in Poland. This is a clear violation of our specifications, and we have terminated our relationship with them. And then another point I wanted to make here, point out in the article, it says, according to the Daily Mail report on the study results, the horse meat contamination can be tracked back to a full year, or at least since last May. So, obviously, this has been going on for quite a while. So is this oversight in their part? Are they not, have they not noticed? Do they not keep a tight enough rein on their suppliers? This is an issue that maybe will lead them to taking a little bit closer watch on where they're getting their products from. So, and again, like I said, this is kind of a huge deal that's come out, and obviously could hurt its reputation, Burger King's reputation, if not just in the UK where this is going on, but even in America here. People hear these things, and then all of a sudden it's a whole huge ordeal. And I will tell you that I have, living in Japan, I had horse meat. I had raw horse meat. I've had horse meat pastrami, and in those areas it's really not that big of a deal, and I would say it's quite good. I mean, obviously when we think of eating meat, we just don't think of eating horses. That's just something we don't think of, especially in America. But the issue here is when you're eating something that says it's one thing and it actually contains another thing. That's the real issue, because even though I've had horse meat myself and quite honestly enjoyed it, the issue here is not that, to me, not that that's particular meat that we're eating, but it's what was it supposed to be. It's supposed to be a beef burger, and then this is found in it. It can mean several things. It can mean they're either trying to stretch the product out. There's no care in the facility, in the safety of the food and things like that. So what else is getting in there that we don't know about? And then obviously just the flat out, you're not getting what you're paying for, as far as if you're a restaurant or someone selling these items, you're not getting. That's why they terminated their relationship with them, because this is a huge deal. I mean, this could really hurt their business for sure. So I wanted to keep going here, but again, I wanted to point this out, but also say that it's a little absurd in the amount of coverage it's getting, because it's not that huge of a deal on the surface, as far as just being contaminated with horse meat. And we'll look at some of the actual points, whether it's how much is in there, how many burgers they've found, and things like that. And it goes beyond this, and this is really why I covered this, is because even though I don't think it's such a big deal, I want to cover it because I want to point out what are things that are worse than that. And so that was the Natural Society article, and then I'm going to go back here at the end and cover what I'm talking about here concerning things that are even worse for us that are in the food that they're just allowing, and they know what's wrong with it, and they're just allowing it to be in there. So moving right along, here's a Guardian article. I'm obviously covering, choosing to cover articles from the UK, so the Guardian itself publication being in the UK. And Thursday the 31st of January this was put out. It says Burger King revealed its burgers were contaminated in horse meat scandal. They said very trace amounts. You can see the article here. One thing I wanted to say, this is this first little piece that I have highlighted here, was quoted in the first article I read from Natural Society. It basically just says Burger King has said that our independent DNA study results on products taken from restaurants were negative for any equine data. However, 4 samples recently taken from the Silvercrest plant have shown the presence of very small trace amounts of equine DNA. Within the last 36 hours, we have established that Silvercrest used a small percentage of beef imported from a non-approved supplier in Poland. So they promised to deliver 100% British and Irish beef patties and have not done so. It's a clear violation of our specifications, and we have terminated our relationship with them. So again, this is an issue of not only is Burger King going through one supplier, but then that supplier is going through another supplier to get the product, and that's where the problem goes. You know, here in America we have McDonald's, and if you've seen documentaries like Food Incorporated and so on and so forth, then you know about how all this food is coming from several different, maybe even possibly hundreds of different beef plants, and so you don't know when there's an issue. Who knows where the stuff came from? How can you trigger and how can you pinpoint an issue if you don't know where it came from? If the source of the ingredients are so diverse that you don't know the integrity of the product is there. And so this is a perfect example of that. This is in the UK, but this happens here. I would say probably worse than in there. And then they go on. VP of Global Quality for Burger King said, I apologize to our guests who trust us to source only the highest ingredients, quality 100% beef burgers. Testing for equine DNA is not a standard practice used in beef production. Yeah, duh. I mean, why would you test for horse DNA in a product that shouldn't contain it in the first place? You know, this is a problem. This is an example of why we're in trouble with our food supplies, that this question would even come up. We don't need to test for horse DNA if we're serving something with beef, you know, but it should go without saying, but it doesn't. Tesco and other supermarkets admit to traces of pork in the beef. So there's also pork, and this could obviously be an issue with some people's moral and religious beliefs in eating pork. This is an issue for sure, and when you're dealing with something like pork, where many people don't eat pork for those reasons. This is from the Telegraph. Patrick Saar, he says it right away. He says the development is likely to cause a concern to consumers, particularly those who do not eat pork on religious grounds. And so many products that were pre-made from the same facility, cottage pie, beef curry, lasagna, also contain pig DNA. He says we're not contesting their results, but this is very, very small amounts, and so he's trying to run a damage control there. But it really is, like I said, a bigger issue, a bigger example, or an insight into what really goes on, and it really should open up our eyes. Hopefully these suppliers, these providers of food such as Burger King and others, take a look at this and say, we need to watch our purveyors a lot closer. But I'm going to go on to the next article here. It says lasagna taken off shelves amid concern over horse meat contamination. Tesco and Aldi withdraw ready meals produced by the French food supplier Colmigel. This is from Wednesday's the 6th of February from The Guardian again. See a picture of that lasagna. That looks a little bit gross there. Anyway, I don't know if that's good. Period. But going down, it just goes through the different things. But it says Findus UK said it withdrew its 320 gram, 360 gram, and 500 gram lasagna meals as a precautionary measure after a labeling issue with a supplier was uncovered. The company insisted it was not a food safety issue and that they deserve their consumers' trust, and it's priority for them. As part of that commitment, we have been constantly reviewing our supply chain. See, that's the important thing, is reviewing that supply chain. And you know, it goes just back to that. These they were taken out over precautionary measure, and it really isn't a food safety issue. That, you know, unless for some crazy reason you're allergic to horse, you know, that would be a food safety issue if someone risked getting sick because of it being horse. But it really, you know, it really isn't a food safety issue. And like I've said, it goes beyond that, and that's why I wanted to look at this next article here. This is going back to Natural Society, and Anthony Gucciardi, he put this out amidst all of this because, you know, he too, and I agree with him, there's way more things worse than horse meat, and he just picks out a few here. But he has an article here that I found because of this whole horse meat scandal, and it's titled 4 Fast Food Ingredients That Are Way Worse Than Horse Meat. And he goes through, as you're likely aware, Burger King UK recently admitted that its famous fast food symbol, the Whopper, and its other burgers were actually made using horse meat. In an admission that came just hours after denying the presence of horse meat in the burgers, the secret ingredient has been broadcast on media stations worldwide as a breaking news piece. But what about the ingredients we know exist in many fast food creations are actually far more concerning? Yeah, I mean, the burgers, you know, he uses the words made using horse meat. Well, we don't know how many burgers that was that actually people ate. You know, it's this is the thing where it's kind of getting blown out of proportion a little bit. But I like what he's doing here, coming back and saying this is the real issue here. And these are just, like I said, just a few that he lists here. Basically, the company was forced to admit it. Fast food eaters truly have no idea what they're eating. You know, I would say forced to admit the DNA results. Would they have said anything to us if no one found out? Obviously not. I mean, it's a bad image for them to have this issue. And but here's some things in here that they really don't want you to know about. And they know they're in there, and they know the studies. You can't tell me they don't know what this stuff causes. He goes on to say, 4 fast food ingredients that are way worse than horse meat, because like I said, horse meat is not bad. They use number 1 is an electronic cigarette filler or synthetic laxative. That's right, the popular Wendy's Frosty, particularly the Coffee Toffee Twisted Frosty, it contains a laxative chemical, an electronic cigarette filler known as propylene glycol. It's among 25 ingredients that make up this Frosty. So if you've ever made a milkshake or something similar to that, you know there's only a few ingredients in there. Well, when you buy one from a chain that has it pre-made and so on and so forth, they have to dummy proof it for their staff in order to get it the right consistency every place to taste the same. Well, it's going to have 25 ingredients or more in there. That's right, this propylene glycol, it's the same thing they use as a killing and preserving agent in traps, pitfall traps. I'm assuming it's rat traps, neurotoxic effects in children, and so on and so forth. And I highlighted here, it just so happens to be even illegal in cat food. So our cats can't eat it, but we can. Number 2, a flour bleaching agent used in yoga mats, foam and foamed plastics. And it says that, but this is talking about the McRib sandwich, the McDonald's McRib. It's an ingredient known as azodicarbonamide. It's banned in Australia, Europe, and Singapore, and it's used in the creation of foamed plastics like yoga mats. The troubling chemical is one of the 70 ingredients that comprise the, quote, pork in the McRib sandwich. So I know the ribs that I eat when I ate more meat, the ribs that I had just had a few ingredients in it. It was the rib and all the seasoning. Well, the McRib isn't. I've worked with them. They're quite disgusting, and to have 70 ingredients in there is really, really, really bad. But this particular one ingredient, I highlighted here, you can see it here on the screen, the fact that it's banned in some of these other countries. See, but U.S., they just push it right through. So going on, number 3, silicone breast implant filler. That's right. Not only do the Chicken McNuggets have an autolyzed yeast extract, which is very similar in nature to MSG. That's bad enough, but the Chicken McNuggets at McDonald's are full of surprises for sure, also containing dimethyl polysaloxane. This is the chemical that is used in silicone breast implants and silly putty, or at least for a short while longer. See, those things, dimethyl polysaloxane, that ingredient is actually being phased out as a breast implant filler due to safety concerns by the industry, says this article. But of course, it's still used in McDonald's. Not in Britain, but so much for the U.S. We still use it in the U.S. And I covered that in my last year's Super Bowl Party Food Exposed. I know for sure I covered in that one. Dimethyl polysaloxane. It's also in the actual fryer oil. I've looked at it. Every fryer oil that I've used in the industrial kitchen, it'll say that on there. It'll have dimethyl polysaloxane, and that's in there. If it has a foaming agent, that's what that particular anti-foaming agent is going to be. So if you see that on there, that's what that is. It's the same stuff that's in those chicken nuggets. So anything that you're eating, fried foods, it's probably going to have that in there. So you got to be careful of that. And then it says chemical salad. You know, you think a lot of these places, Wendy's, McDonald's, all the rest, at these fast food places, they're making more choices, more, quote, healthy choices, and they're bringing out salad options. Well, take McDonald's for example. It says not only does the cilantro, quote, cilantro lime glaze and the, quote, orange glaze used on many of these salads contain propylene glycol, but a medley of others on this list as well. So it contains that deadly chemical we looked at already that they use in electronic cigarette fillers. But there's also a couple other ingredients that stand out. These are chemicals. Disodium inosinate and disodium guanylate both divulge the presence of MSG within, quote, this healthy salad. So, and those are just a few. I mean, this is really, he really did. I mean, I'm glad he put this out, but he really just did scratch the surface here. I mean, this is just a few ingredients that we're eating. Well, I'm not eating as far as I can try. But he ends here, until we realize that lettuces may contain more than the eye can perceive, such as pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, preservatives, flavor enhancers, sweeteners, and more, it will be impossible to establish what, quote, healthy really means. So, and this next bit of news this week covers the fact that they have found, regulators have discovered a hidden viral gene in commercial GMO crops. And this is from the Independent Science News. And basically it gives a quick rundown. I'll read this first intro to this. It says, this is published January 21st, so a couple weeks behind on this, but they've had some new developments and they've had some new articles put out about them blowing the lid off of this and what the ramifications could be going forward. But it says, how should a regulatory agency announce they have discovered something potentially very important about the safety of products they have been approving for over 20 years? In the course of analysis to identify potential allergens in GMO crops, the European Food Safety Authority, or the EFSA, has belatedly discovered that the most common genetic regulatory sequence in commercial GMOs also encodes a significant fragment of a viral gene. This finding has serious ramifications for crop biotechnology and its regulation, but possibly even greater ones for consumers and farmers. This is because there are clear indications that this viral gene, they've called gene 6, might not be safe for human consumption. It also may disturb the normal functioning of crops, including their natural pest resistance. And it goes on to explain it closer, but they found it. It goes on to say here, among the affected transgenic events are some of the most widely grown GMOs, including Roundup Ready soybeans and MON 810 maize. They include the controversial NK603 maize, recently reported as causing tumor in rats. That's the Seralini study we covered last week. So this is a huge issue, and things are just seem to be falling apart for the biotech industry. And that particular study is published here. This is from Lands Bioscience, copyright 2012. The title of it, if you look this up or if you see it, this will be what it's called, or this is what they refer to as possible consequences of the overlap between the CAMV35S promoter regions in plant transformation vectors used and the viral gene 6 in transgenic plants. And it goes on, it says the present paper investigates whether introduction of P35S variants by genetic transformation is likely to result in the expression of functional domains of the P6 protein and in potential impacts in transgenic plants. A bioinformatic analysis was performed to assess the safety for human and animal health of putative translation products of gene 6 overlapping P35S. And they say from a literature study it became clear that long variants of the P35S do contain an open reading frame when expressed might result in unintended phenotypic changes. And then they have a flow chart. You can see that lower in the article in the study that they published there. And it really gets into some very scientific things, so I'm not going to go into that fully, but just wanted to cover this one topic quickly, probably quicker than I should cover it. But there's one article from the Mail Online out of the UK that covers this particular issue quite well, and so I wanted to look at that real quickly. But they originally published this on the 21st of January and then also updated it on the 24th by Sean Poulter, the Consumer Affairs editor for Mail Online. And really just quickly, it says uncovered the quote toxic gene hiding in GM crops. Revelation throws new doubt over safety of foods. And it breaks down the article here, a summary of 4 points that this article covers. That the approval for GM foods fails to identify poisonous gene. 54 of the 86 GM plants approved contain the dangerous gene. The gene found in food for farm animals producing meat, milk, and eggs. And biotech supporters argue there is no evidence that GM foods are harmful. Of course, because they support that industry. Because that's the issue here. You know, his third point here about it's being used as food. It's one thing for us to knowingly, you know, we know about genetically modified foods and the two main, you know, the big ones, soy and corn, being used in so many products. I understand, you know, we can easily cut those out by looking for organic, by not eating things with high fructose corn syrup, so on and so forth. But what about when we're eating meat? Maybe you're a vegetarian that still eats eggs even. I mean, this is an issue. This is a major problem. This is why GMO is such a hot button again amongst people as myself that cover this regularly and want to get the word out about it. It's in everything. And you can say, oh, minute amounts might not hurt you. First key word is might, and the second thing is the fact that we have it in so many foods, and I talked about it last week. But we have it in so many different foods that it's so hard for us to avoid it and to not get small levels of it. It's really easy to just our whole diet be comprised of it. So just going through this article quickly, shows a field there with someone added a biohazard sign with genetically modified on it. It says the findings are particularly powerful because the work was carried out by independent experts rather than GM critics. I talked about that last week, how all these tests that approve these crops are done by the very companies that are wishing to get them approved to sell them. So it's a conflict of interest, to say the least. Critics say the revelations make clear that the GM approvals process, which has been in place for 20 years, is fatally flawed. That's another issue, because we need to go back and all these things that they've approved for us, and this is going to be hard for us to get them to admit that these things were approved too quickly or in a haste or not fully tested, and so now we're suffering the consequences of it, and they're going to have to go back and run damage control and they're going to have to admit that they were wrong, and they've possibly harmed the public. It says this situation represents a complete and catastrophic system failure. There are clear indications that this viral gene might not be safe for human consumption. It also may disturb the normal functioning of crops, including their natural pest resistance. Reasonable concern is that the protein produced by gene 6 might be a human toxin. This is a question that can only be answered by future experiments. So they need more tests, and more tests, I say, by other companies than what are actually selling them. I mean, it's a huge conflict of interest here. So it's like I'll use an analogy of a murderer that is also the judge and the jury. You know, this is a person that is facing a trial, that is being judged and being judged by a jury and a judge that is also himself. So, you know, it's a problem there. There's a problem here. You know, obviously he's not going to, you know, I don't have to tell you that he's not going to convict himself. But that's that. We're going to move on and look at an action point this week. And so in covering this action alert this week, in the interest of time, I'm just going to review it really quickly here. And basically it says, this is from Food Democracy Now!, talking about the whole Pepsi Monsanto connection. That's this week's action alert and action points that we can take. So until next time, this has been Food Offensive Weekly News. Thank you for joining me.